Hi, our video today is about the herb basil. Basil is an annual herb that grows about 2 feet tall by 1 foot wide on a central stalk. And before I start talking a little bit about how to plant basil, I want to talk a little bit about the history of basil. Basil has been, well, first of all, the word basil comes from the Greek word meaning king. Basil seems to have been associated with houses of worship and holy places for forever, it seems. It's been used in or around temples for over 3,000 years. And then beginning with Christianity, it was associated with the legend about Helen, who was Constantine's mother. And the legend goes that the place where Helen found the cross is a place where basil popped up and grew. So this is the reason that basil is used in the preparation of holy water in the Greek Orthodox Church. And basil has it has a lot of different medicinal uses throughout history too. They have different chemical compositions depending on the type of basil, and that controls a lot about how they smell differently. The chief chemical in sweet basil, which is probably the most popular basil, is called eugenol, E-U-G-E-N-O-L. And these essential oils, especially eugenol, have been used throughout history in herbal medicine for their potent antioxidant, antimicrobial, and antiviral properties. You'll see here I have a couple of different varieties of basil before me. They're all very young because I'm just starting them right now. This is purple basil. This is Genovese basil. I just planted all these from transplants just a couple of days ago. And then there's sweet basil after that. I don't know if we can see that on the camera. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about how to plant your basil seeds. Again, I said basil is an annual, so you're going to have to plant it from seeds. And here are some seeds I gathered from last year's crop of sweet basil. I don't know if you can see them there, but they're very small, little bitty black seeds. And what I want to do is I usually just plant mine after the first frost is over, like after the vernal equinox around March 21st, or you can start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost is expected to kind of get a head start. And you can either plant them directly in the ground after the first frost, or you can put them in pots. Now, basil loves full sun, and it loves good soil, good rich, humus-rich soil, and it can't tolerate drought very well. So, let me show you the way that I prefer to start my seeds. I start them in late March, like I said, after the first frost is over, after the vernal equinox, and I just start them in pots. Just a pot like this. I get just like a regular packet of seeds, or the seeds that I've saved from last year's crop, and then I just sprinkle my seeds on the ground. These are very small seeds, so you don't want to bury them too deeply. Now you want to firm them down with your hand. That pushes them into the ground a little more. And now put another very thin layer of soil. The rule of thumb for seeds is to always put dirt over them that's about 1.5 the depth or width of the seed. So that's not very much dirt. I'm just making a very thin coating of dirt. Then I'll firm it down again, and then I'll water it gently to like maybe mist it the first time that I water it, so that it will stay moist and the seeds will be evenly dispersed. Now I just keep it in a sunny place and make sure it's moist, and the seeds will emerge in 5 to 8 days. Now here are some pots that I've started basil in right after in late March. And here I have Genovese basil, and here I have the sweet basil, probably the most popular basil. And again, I just got like seed pack, or the seeds I had from last year, and planted them. I consider this a very economical way to plant your basil, and also it seems to increase the germination rate. When I plant them all in these pots like this, and then I transplant them from these pots directly into the garden or into the pots that they're going to finally grow in. And I think it's a really economical way because you plant one pack of seeds that cost about $1.20, and then you have between 75 and 100 plants for each variety. So I don't see the reason to pay between $3.50 and $4 a plant as you're asked to pay these days when you go to the store, because families need about at least 10 basil plants to produce the amount of basil that they need for cooking and making pesto. So you don't want to spend over $30. Just spend $1 for a pack of seeds, $1.20, and plant them in your pots, and then plant your transplants. Now the next thing I want to do, these are ready to transplant into my garden or into pots. If I do transplant them into pots, I want to make sure I put them in a pot with a hole in the bottom, a large, like 10-inch pot with a hole in the bottom, and then, or a larger pot, and with very rich, humus-rich soil. Now, the next thing I'm going to demonstrate, this is a very high-tech and expensive garden tool, the dinner fork. Yes, the dinner fork is an excellent garden tool, and it's one of my most used tools outside of the scissors and the hoe. So, what I do with this method is I just stick it in the ground here, and I gently, so I put the fork in about 1 inch from the stem of the plant, and then I put my fingers down here like this around the soil around the plant, and then I pull up. And there you go. See how easy that was? Using this fork method is a very easy way to keep from disturbing the roots and gently pull apart the different plants from the roots of the others without hurting them. And it's a very fast way. Now, like I said, I can directly plant this in the ground or in a pot. So I dig a hole here, dig it a little deeper, probably about at least 4 inches deep. And then I want to put some more good soil in there within the hole. Kind of give it a head start with some good rich, humus-rich soil. And then I want to put my plant down in there. Put a little more of this nice humus-rich soil around it. And then firm it up. And that's what you do. And now I have basil in my garden. And so also now I want to wait until my basil gets about 8 inches tall. These are starting to get a little taller. Like I said, I just planted these just a few days ago. And when they get about 8 inches tall, I can start picking leaves off of them. The way I use basil is I pick the fresh leaves as I need them. I can just clip them with the scissors or with my fingernail, and that so I can use the leaves anytime I need them. Now, one thing you want to do with basil too is you want to cut leaves off pretty often, because the more that you prune it or cut leaves, the bushier it's going to grow. And whenever you see it start to try to make flowers on top, you want to pinch those flowers off very soon, because when they start to make flowers, they start to make seeds, and then they're going to make less leaves for you to cook with, and you're going to have some scraggly basil that's not very productive. Another way I can use my basil to cook with is, besides just picking the fresh leaves as I need them from the garden, is I can go ahead and wash some basil and put it in some pots of water on my windowsill, and that way that'll save me a trip to the garden. So I just pull off the leaves and use the fresh basil as I'm cooking. I do this all the time. There is always some fresh herbs in my windowsill ready to be used. This is basil, and this is some spearmint. I'm always making spearmint tea and lots of Persian dishes that use spearmint. Another way to use your basil is I always have a freezer full of pesto. And there's two ways you can make pesto. Pesto is mostly basil leaves and garlic cloves and pine nuts and olive oil, and it's a mixture that is very yummy in all Italian dishes just about, and it's really good in
on pizza, like right before you can smear it on the pizza dough, the pizza crust dough, and then you can put the tomato paste next, or mix it with the tomato paste. So I always have, you can make two different versions of pesto. You can make one that's in olive oil that sits out on your counter, or you can keep in your refrigerator, or I make a fat-free pesto without olive oil by using some Italian dressing instead. And here's some of my pesto. And you can either freeze these in ice cube trays and make them just little squares for exactly what you need, or I can just cut these out really easily with a knife, and I can just hold them in my hand and they will melt in about 1 minute and they'll be ready to use in my dishes. And you can see I have a lot of this. And now after my crop gets really large, I'm going to show you how to make the different types of pesto.